So the first question from me is, Sharon's such a great character. You wrote her and you play her. She shares some autobiographical similarities to you, but obviously she's a different character. She's also quite indulgent, insecure. Were you ever tempted to try to make her behave more nicely, or were you happy to let her go?
No, I'm an asshole. Yeah, no, it's funny, this line between autobiographical and fictional, and I really wanted to make a film that was personal, but I have no interest in making autobiographical work, and I don't want to do a diary entry. I don't think that would be interesting for anybody, and if I'm going to evaluate my life and the things about my circumstances that I think are interesting, then I really have to take a step back and evaluate them with a huge grain of salt. And that's why it's important to work with collaborators that you really trust, who know you. I mean, I knew Olivier personally before we made this film, and he and Cecilia, my producer, were able to give me that voice of reason, that were like, let's create something that's a bit more universal. So it really is a matter of, I've always wanted to see a character on screen who was queer, who was Iranian American, who, so I'm really out of breath because of the running.
You don't have to exercise today.
Yeah, this morning I was like, take a run before your Q&A, and I did. So that was God's work. Wow, that one scored. I want to do stand-up now. Done.
I told you. I told you.
Done. Thank you. Well, it's better if, I think I should do stand-up specifically for people who just watched the film and liked it. It's like the people who hate it leave, and then everyone stays, and then you're like, here are some jokes. So I think that you turn to your collaborators. Like the film, it's so funny. I get credited for so much of this because I star in it, because I wrote it, because I directed it. But that's. I know, I'm very modest too. But the thing is that wouldn't be humanly possible if I weren't leaning so heavily on my collaborators. So there's a lot of Cecilia, my producer in this, who I wish were here, but she just left on her honeymoon last night. Yeah, I know, I'm really proud of her. She's been putting everything of her personal life on hold to babysit me for 2 years. So I'm really happy she got to do that. But so there's so much of her in there, and there's so much of my cinematographer, and there's so much of my editor. And so it's very strange to me when people are like, oh my God, it's you on screen. And it's like, no, it's all of us taking the piss out of my cliches and my horrible tendencies.
One more question about, you worked on The Slope, which obviously Olivier and Cecilia were able to use to help finance the film. Can you talk a little bit about The Slope as a project for both of you guys, actually, for Olivier to help sell the world on the vision for the film, on Desi's vision for the film, but also talk about the process of writing and how what you did on The Slope helped you develop this feature film as well.
Yeah. We did this yesterday, so I hope I don't bore you. We can maybe improve on our answers now. So The Slope was a web series that I did that you can find online, and it was these 5-minute kind of Portlandia-esque, Larry David-esque look at life from this lesbian couple's point of view in Park Slope, Brooklyn, which is a very liberal neighborhood filled with lesbian families. So the thing about The Slope is I met that girlfriend, Ingrid Youngerman, who I made The Slope with in film school, and we had just really exhausted ourselves making these short films that we shot on Super 16 and blew so much money on, and we're so precious with every frame. And we had this feeling, I'm not sure if it was self-imposed or or grad school imposed, but we had this idea that it had to look like, films need to look a certain way. And every frame I looked at, I was like, oh, would Noah Baumbach approve that frame? And it was this pressure that I put on myself, and nothing was ever good enough, and it made my work inauthentic in some way, that there was something missing. I was a little bit artistically constipated. And so Ingrid and I, we were having a conversation once about why gay films didn't speak to us, the majority of them, the ones on the Netflix instant queue, not Weekend, but the old ones, the ones that go, I'm not even gonna keep talking because who knows who's in this audience. They're like, I love that film. There were lots of films that didn't speak to us, and I felt it's alienating when you're coming out and all you want to do is watch narratives of women falling in love with women, and none of them speak to you on a very personal level. And so we were talking about that, and then we were talking about like other gay issues, like, well, I don't dress like a lesbian, and I don't do this like a lesbian. And then suddenly it hit us that we were the world's worst lesbians. And so we said, like, well, what if we made a show of that? What if we were the like superficial homophobic lesbians? Because we sound kind of homophobic right now. So that's a very long-winded explanation of, then we went into this process of writing it, like I would write one draft Monday, send it to her, she would put her edits, done. Wednesday we would shoot it in an hour or two with some friends, done. Saturday I would take a few hours editing, she would pass the computer to her, she would edit it, then we put it online. Like we were so fast and not precious with it, and it was some of the funniest, most exciting work I had ever done. And for the first time since, I did theater growing up, and I decided to do film in college. And it was the first time since I started doing film that I was having so much fun doing it. And I had forgotten how important it was to have a good time. That like for somehow this like success greediness of like this desire to be seen overwhelmed my desire to have a good time. And actually having a good time was the best thing I could have done with my work, and I got seen for the first time, and that was the process of making that. But you should talk about how it helped us make this film.
Yeah, well, I've been given this mic. I won't talk too much about it because I don't know how many filmmakers are in the audience, and so the whole...
Raise your hand if you're a filmmaker.
Oh, that's good. No, all filmmakers...
There are so many more, and they just don't identify that way because they don't make money. I don't make money either.
They're all in bed right now, that's why. So the actual process of kind of getting films financed and raised is always very difficult, but it's exceptionally difficult when it's someone's first feature, because there's always a lot of nervousness about, can someone pull it off on the big screen, and you can read a really funny script, but will it actually be really good on film? And doing something, I mean, like I said, I'd have the privilege of knowing Desiree for a long time through Cecilia, who's my business partner at Parkville Pictures, and they went to film school here together. And so I'd known Desiree, we'd seen each other at dinners and drinks every time you were visiting here, and then Cecilia was like, oh, look, Desi's made this really cool web series, and we watched it, and it was like, wow, that's really funny, that's Desi, you know, and it's there, it's great, and it was a voice. And then you made that first series, and on the back of that, people were starting to kind of watch it more and more views on YouTube. You got another second series done through Kickstarter, you could see how much support there was for it. So the kind of web series was showing that, you know, this tone, this voice, which kind of translates onto appropriate behavior. It's not exactly the same, but you can see it's the same kind of creative force. You can see a kind of proof of concept there. It worked, people liked it. It wasn't just us that watched it, but other people on YouTube, you can actually see how many. And kind of going to finances, you go, look, there are people that want to hear this story or listen to that voice or laugh at those moments. And it kind of also shows what I think is the most important thing, when there's a lot, exceptionally, especially in like Europe, where you have a lot of public funding for all of the creative endeavors that are out there, whether it's theater, whether it's cinema, or whatever it might be. And a lot of people wait around asking for permission to do stuff. And you could just see Desiree was just out there and just making it happen. You know, it didn't cost a lot, I imagine, that first series of The Slope, and the second series
We paid for lunch.
Yeah, you paid for lunch, which I'm sure was a big deal, you know. And then the second one was a Kickstarter, and you just kind of see this is someone, you know, who's going to kind of shout, have their voice heard. And if you're not going to be part of it, someone else is going to be part of it, and that's just always so compelling for any kind of production company or any financier. So for us, actually getting the film financed, yeah, it's always difficult, but it helped so much just seeing that energy was there, that dynamic energy.
Okay, well, I want to ask about comedy. And is there, I mean, a lot of what's in The Slope and here is quite close to the bone, which is why it's really so funny. Is there anywhere that you feel like you won't go with comedy?
I don't like things that are mean-spirited, but it's a very fine line as to what is conceived that way. And there are some jokes in the film that people do find offensive and mean-spirited, and I think it's a very personal moral boundary. And you know, I know where my ethics and my morals lie, and I know, like, I really do believe in the anatomy of a joke and who's the butt of it. And I think I know in my own opinion that I am the butt of most of the jokes, and I'm very comfortable with that. But I would hate to. I mean, that's it. But like, it's a matter of opinion, and that's what's really interesting about all of this. Like, I wonder what you think too, because as a straight white man, you can't say certain things that I can. And there is something really fun about being a woman of color who's queer, who can say those things, but I don't say them just for shock value. Like, I really do believe in the political and the, like, you have to give a shit. Like, it has to matter. Otherwise, why make a joke?
I think one of the things that you said, Desi's done a lot of talking at many screenings, and she always remains so eloquent, but one of the things that I remember you saying is that you don't think a joke is funny unless it's laced in despair.
Yeah.
And I think that was just one of the best kind of examples of how you express yourself, because you care about the themes, but the way that you show your care is through the humor, and that often tends to be more moving and more effective.
Yeah, it's true. And I find that like most of the most horrible things in my life have been incredibly funny, and I've always held on to them to milk them for comedy. It's true though, you know, like there's just something so absurd about the inequities in life and tragedy in whatever form it takes. And that's why I think that's maybe why my humor is very deadpan, or my delivery is deadpan, because I don't enjoy like giving a wink and a nod to everyone I'm making a joke about, or two, you know? I find that indulgent, but it's taste. It's so personal. My sense of humor is very personal, and I rarely see it on screen.
Great. So I know you worked with, we heard Electra Lane in the closing credits, and you also worked with Josephine Wiggs, who was in The Breeders previously. How did that relationship come about? Because the score is great. I mean, the music is really brilliant.
Yeah, I love Josephine. She contacted me and Ingrid while we were making The Slope, and she offered to make us an intro song for the second season, and she did. And then I became friends with her, and I invited her to the first rough cut screening of the film, and amazingly, she sat through it without, projectile vomiting all over herself because it was so bad. And then afterwards, I asked her to do the score, and she agreed. So it was like dinner after I screened this, and it was really bad. So she's just a good friend, I think. Olivier feels awesome. He was just like, awesome. I love Annie Hall, and I hope I'm not compared to him personally, because I think he's disgusting. Yeah. Yeah. My girlfriend is 12, so we're much closer in age than he and Sun Yi. But I really love Annie Hall, and Annie Hall was definitely an influence on this film structurally, and that was the first film I saw that was a love story about a couple that was doomed from the start. And like the first line of the film is like, well, Annie and I broke up and blah, blah, blah. Like, you know the premise, you know that it's not going to work out, and yet the challenge of the film that it succeeds in is somehow falling in love with this couple, rooting for them, and kind of understanding why they can't stay together. And it was that challenge that I wanted to set for myself going into this film, especially because I was raised very much on film and television, and it spoon-fed me this myth that if you love someone and you're pure of heart, and they love you and they are pure of heart, by that I mean like a good person, you'll stay together forever. Like, nothing will get in your way. And I got engaged at 20 because we were both so in love. And of course, we fell out of love, and that was normal. And when we broke up, I was so shocked. I was like, they lied. The movies lied. We're both good people who true of heart, who like didn't cheat, who didn't have secret families or lives elsewhere. Like, it didn't work out. And that myth was so ingrained in me of romantic love, and romantic love being like the savior of your life and the thing that's going to heal you. It just wasn't true, and I really wanted to make movies that reflect that. I have more projects. I have no idea what's next because it depends on people with money. With Olivier's company, Parkville Pictures, I am developing my second feature. It is an adaptation of a YA novel. I cannot announce the name, but I will say that it's queer, and it's great. It's queer. It's about a young girl in 93, so I'll say it's period. And why is that funny? Period. And I also have a television series. It's a bisexual dating comedy that I'd like to make, and I have no idea who will ever buy it. And I'm writing a book. But okay, I'm doing all these things on spec. I have no idea when they'll.
And who thinks Desi should do stand-up? Because I do.
And I will say that Olivier just produced a feature film called Spaceship, which is in post-production with Parkville Pictures. Lena Dunham contacted me after Sundance, which is where I premiered this film a little over a year ago. And I met her, and she was awesome, and we got along really well. And then months went by, and I was doing my own thing, and she was writing the next season of Girls. And once they had their first table read, she emailed and asked me to read a role. And that led to getting the role. So that was it. I love the show. I'm a fan of it. Cecilia and I had not seen it when we wrote the script. But I think it's one of those things. I think sometimes, like, you find kindred spirits in the world, and mine just happens to be incredibly famous and well known. Like, she happened to do everything I'd like to do several years before I did it. And that's exciting, because, like, her work speaks to me on a really personal level, and I hope my work can be, you know, to speak to other people on that level. And I don't know. It's so nice right now because there are so many women like that who are sharing really honest work. And I see the subtlety in between them. I don't see myself as the same as that. But if others see me like that, then that's cool too, because it's work that people have monetized, which is exciting, and it's also good quality work.